Hi. Okay, sorry again for the brief delay. I know you were all interested in what our Secretary of State had to say. Just to note, and I know all of you have been following this quite closely, but to reiterate, a total of approximately 19,000 people were evacuated from Kabul over a period of 24 hours that, of course, ended early this morning. This is the result of 42 U.S. military flights, which carried approximately 11,200 evacuees, and 48 coalition flights, which carried 7,800 people, for a total of 90 flights out of Kabul, which, if I get my math right, that's approximately a flight every 39 minutes. I believe the Department of Defense gave that statistic. And just to reiterate, since August 14th, we have evacuated, the United States has evacuated and facilitated the evacuation of approximately 82,300 people on U.S. military and coalition flights as part of one of the largest airlifts in world history. Since the end of July, we have relocated approximately 88,000 people on U.S. military and coalition flights. Two other items unrelated to that topic. Today, we've announced new actions to help protect vulnerable tenants and landlords. For months, the administration has worked to speed up the delivery of emergency rental assistance, as we've talked about quite a bit, and help keep American families safe and in their homes. And as the President has made clear, no state or locality should delay in distributing resources that have been provided by Congress to meet families' critical needs, and we want to continue to take steps to make that easier. So today, the Treasury Department is strengthening existing guidance and implementing new policies to ensure that state and local grantees can further accelerate the distribution of ERA funds to struggling landlords and renters most at risk of eviction. Specifically, they're providing explicit permission for grantees to use self-attestation without further documentation of their economic circumstances, to give you a specific example, in order to speed the delivery of assistance to households in need during the public health emergency. There are also a number of steps that are being taken by USDA, HUD, the VA, and HHS, including USDA is working with owners of 400,000 rental units in USDA-backed properties to mitigate all evictions. HUD will ensure tenants in public housing first have the opportunity to access emergency rental assistance money before facing eviction, and HUD will extend the eviction notice period from 14 to 30 days during the COVID national emergency period. And the VA will expand rental support to at-risk veterans and their families from just 7 states to now all 50 states and the U.S. territories. So this is just some of the examples of steps we're taking. Amr, go ahead.
On Afghanistan, there seems to be a disconnect. Veterans organizations, refugee advocates are saying that Afghans with visas are risking death and facing beatings at the airport. And I hope I'm framing this right, but there's been the sense that I've heard, I think, from you and others in the administration that the Taliban is by and large met its commitment to allow people with the right papers onto the airport. Can you try to help Americans that are seeing and what seems to be a disconnect between these two different statements of what is happening?
Well, first let me say I wouldn't see it as a disconnect, and let me explain to you why. I noted earlier that, or we put out earlier today, that 19,000 people were evacuated. The vast majority in a 24-hour period. The vast majority of those were, of course, Afghans, as you know by the numbers that the Secretary of State just put out. That does mean that a great number of people are making their way into the airport and onto flights to evacuate from the country. There are certainly cases and incidents, and we have heard, you have reported, where individuals are not getting through that should get through. And we are approaching those and addressing those on a case-by-case basis as those are raised. But I would note that again, 19,000 people in a period of time. The vast majority of them are Afghans, SIV applicants, individuals who have the appropriate paperwork to evacuate, and that was just in a 24-hour period.
Can you give us an update on where things stand with the President and the coronavirus origins review?
Sure.
I understand he's gotten a copy of the 90-day report. Was there any conclusions that the IC was able to come up with?
Sure. Well, let me confirm for you, as you noted, he did not just receive a copy, he received a briefing yesterday on the 90-day Origins report. It was a classified briefing, so of course that's not information we would provide publicly. Because of the prioritization we've given to this and the importance of this information for the public, the intelligence community has been simultaneously working on an unclassified version of a summary version to provide publicly. I don't have a timeline for you on when that will be provided, but they've been working expeditiously to prepare that, and we have also been doing classified briefings. But until that unclassified version is available, I won't be able to provide any more details of the assessment.
Without getting into details of the broad upshot of the report, is there a better understanding of what was the ultimate origin?
Again, I can't obviously speak to a classified briefing. I know you are eager to receive an unclassified summary. That is something the intelligence community has been working to produce, and as soon as that is available, it will be put out publicly from the intelligence community, from ODNI, and we will also ensure you all have access to it. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Secretary Blinken just said, and Jake Sullivan said the other day, that even after August 31st, that the U.S. government is committed to helping Americans and Afghans who are still in the country eligible to get out safely. How do you do that if the military is gone? How do you safeguard these people and get them where they need to go without the U.S. military in the country?
Well, I know, Nancy, as you mentioned, that the Secretary was asked that. He didn't go into detail for a reason, because we are currently having those discussions through diplomatic channels. But what he assured, I think, the public of, and I can reiterate from here, is that we are looking at a range of options for how we can continue to provide consular support, facilitate departures for those who wish to leave after August 31st. And our expectation, and the expectation of the international community, is that people who want to leave Afghanistan after the U.S. military depart should be able to do so. We're working on that. As soon as we have more to provide to all of you, more information, we will do exactly that.
And then based on the numbers that you've provided of Americans who have been evacuated, it sounds like there are at least 70,000 Afghans who have been evacuated. How do you possibly vet all of those people in a timely fashion when clearly the Customs and Border Patrol and the relevant officials must be completely overloaded?
They are. And I will say this is a reflection of the fact that we have hundreds of employees of our intelligence community working 24 hours a day to do the vetting necessary and reviews necessary to move people into the United States. Now, I would remind you that there are a number of people, tens of thousands of people who are departing Afghanistan who are going to third countries, lily pads as we've been calling them, and where additional vetting can take place, either because they've only proceeded through certain steps of the immigrant visa process, or because their vetting process has not yet been completed. I can give you a little bit more detail too on the vetting process if that is helpful. So the screening and security vetting is conducted by a combination of the intelligence, law enforcement, and counterterrorism professionals from across government. So the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, the FBI, the State Department, the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center, and additional intelligence community partners. What they are doing are they're conducting screening and security vetting for all SIV applicants and other vulnerable Afghans before they are allowed into the United States. This includes reviews of both biographic and biometric data. And if an individual is not through that vetting process, they're not coming into the United States.
And are there any estimates for how long it'll take to work through that backlog? Could these people be going through the system for months or years?
You mean people who are in third countries? Well, what I will tell you is that it typically takes months to go through this process, and what this is a signal of is the fact that this is a top priority for the president and the intelligence community and the individuals who oversee this vetting process, who have massively expedited the process in order to move through the necessary steps, thorough steps, in order to process individuals and get them moving through the system. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. At the tail end of the president's remarks today about cybersecurity, he was asked about Afghanistan, and he made a joke.
I think Peter asked him that question.
The other Peter did, and he made a joke. So what's so funny?
Well, I think the question he was asked, if I remember correctly, was about when he will provide information about a decision on August 31st. I don't want to paraphrase the question if that was an inaccurate description of the question.
To a lot of people watching.
Of course it's a very important question. And I think what he conveyed is that he has not, well, what I can convey from here, I should say, is that as he stated yesterday, and as the Secretary of State just stated, we're on track to complete our mission by August 31st. Obviously, there are discussions, and the President received a briefing just this morning. As I noted, he asked yesterday for contingency plans, and he received a briefing on them this morning. These are incredibly serious issues, and there are discussions that are happening internally. And I'd note that in addition to the contingency plans that he requested, he also, I will reiterate, as we stated yesterday, that this is all contingent on us achieving our objectives and the continued coordination with the Taliban. And the President has spoken, I would say, to this issue. Peter, as you know, you've attended a number of these multiple times over the last several days. And he has also highlighted the fact that we are closely watching, closely following the threats from ISIS-K, which he also received a briefing on this morning.
And his remarks last night, he gave a lot of time to the domestic agenda. Does he think that the Build Back Better plan is as urgent and as time sensitive as this evacuation of Americans and Afghan friendlies from Kabul?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to the American people who care deeply about whether they're going to have jobs, whether they're going to have child care, whether we are going to be able to compete with China and countries around the world, to understand that we have to do multiple things at the same time. That's exactly what any president of the United States has to do.
The next one, just as these negotiations about safe passage for Americans and SIV holders continue, why haven't we heard the president say the United States does not negotiate with terrorists? Is that still the U.S. policy?
Well, of course it is, Peter, but I would also say that there's a reality that the Taliban is currently controlling large swaths of Afghanistan. That is a reality on the ground. And right now our focus and our priority is getting American citizens evacuated and our Afghan partners evacuated. And I would say, given the numbers that we've outlined and briefed for you, that we've made a great deal of progress in doing exactly that. Okay, go ahead, Justin.
Thanks. I had a couple, but actually to kind of follow up on the question that Peter just asked.
Sure.
You've talked about the coordination with the Taliban and that the president's obviously made this threat of a severe response if they disrupt the effort to get Americans out. But I'm wondering, has the U.S. offered the Taliban anything in terms of cash or supplies to help facilitate this coordination?
No, this is not a quid pro quo. We have laid out clearly what our expectations are about moving American citizens and our Afghan partners, allies out of the country, and that's what we are working to deliver on.
The Fed has their big meeting in Jackson Hole this week, or a virtual one pegged to that. I'm wondering if the president has spoken to Chairman Powell ahead of that meeting or met with him.
No, I don't have any updates or previews or readouts of meetings or engagements with Chairman Powell. Go ahead.
A question about lawmakers who traveled to Afghanistan.
Sure.
Was the White House aware of those members of Congress that traveled to Kabul?
We were not aware when they were en route. No.
What's the White House's reaction to that trip? Was it beneficial, or what's the White House's reaction?
Well, our guidance continues to be to all American citizens, including elected officials. This is not the time to travel to Afghanistan. And our focus, our objectives, our resources need to be laser focused on evacuating Afghan partners, evacuating American citizens, and that's best done in the hands of the Department of Defense and State Department professionals who are on the ground.
One more. The 31st, of course, is the deadline for the drawdown, but when do the gears shift from evacuation mission to withdrawing troops?
Well, I noted a little bit earlier that the president was briefed this morning on contingency plans and continues to have optionality should he decide to change plans, even as we are on track to complete our mission by August 31st. I would also note that my DoD colleagues have put out some information about steps that are being taken. So as we've made consistently clear, commanders on the ground are empowered to make any adjustments as they see fit, when they see fit. That includes changes to the footprint. To that end, they confirmed last night, I believe it was, that of the departure from Afghanistan of several hundred U.S. troops. These troops represent a mix of headquarters staff, maintenance, and other enabling functions that were scheduled to leave and whose mission at the airport was complete. It does not have an impact on our mission at hand.
Go ahead.
No, just following up on Afghanistan.
Sure.
People traveling there, the LA Times has a story saying that a group of students and their parents are in Afghanistan. Do you have any more information on that, or is that
I
that
do
a
not. Who
true
have
story?
recently traveled into Afghanistan?
Who are apparently stranded in Afghanistan after having traveled there. I don't know for certain that this is a
I
legit
certainly
story.
don't have additional information on that. I know, as our Secretary of State just noted, when he went through a thorough summary of American citizens and our contacts and our focus over the last several days, he gave an update. I'm happy to take their information if there's something more detailed you have.
Terrific. And then just on another issue, on the Fed, we're all waiting for some news about Fed appointments. Can you give us any
I've
kind
heard
of a
that.
timeline for a decision on that? Is there any? Can you give us any guidance on?
I don't have
when it's
any
expected?
guidance for you on the timeline.
Okay.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Just
yeah,
real quick.
go
I'm so
ahead.
sorry.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, on Afghanistan, and we just heard from Anthony Blinken that 45 to 46% of those evacuated have been women.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of consternation about the plight of Afghan women going forward. I know this is an issue of concern to you as well, but can you say what provisions you're making to ensure that women are actually sort of an equal part of that population that is being evacuated and it's not quite representative for the population?
Sure. Well, I know that our Secretary of State spoke to this just a few minutes ago. But what I can reiterate or add to, I suppose, is one, we are going to continue to work with the United Nations and our allies and partners around the world to continue to provide humanitarian assistance and a range of assistance to Afghanistan, even when we don't have a presence on the ground. There are also messages we've made clear to the Taliban, and I think that Secretary Blinken also reiterated this about what our expectations are and what the global community expects once we depart Afghanistan. I don't have additional details beyond that, but I will tell you that our commitment to the incredibly brave women and leaders and population in Afghanistan that has fought alongside us, that has bravely stood up, does not change, does not diminish, even after our military is departing from the ground. Yeah.
Anthony Blinken today gave us numbers for the numbers of Americans that are believed to still be in
Yeah.
Afghanistan. But yesterday, during a briefing, we asked questions about how many Afghans and Americans have arrived in the United States. And we were
I
unable to get
provided
those
details on
numbers.
Americans yesterday.
But not on the number of Afghans that have arrived at these military bases. Do you have a specific breakdown on the numbers of people
Well,
that
first
are
I
coming in? I know it's fluid.
confirmed yesterday that it was 4,000 Americans who'd been evacuated. Obviously, that number increased, and the Secretary of State gave an updated number this morning. I would remind you that the U.S. military is overseeing the evacuation of individuals out of Afghanistan, and the State Department oversees the visa processing. Hence, the update was provided by the Secretary of State. During his briefing that he just gave, he also noted that he would work to provide additional numbers of Afghans. But I would note, since we provided a detailed number of Americans, and we have also provided on a day-to-day basis, twice a day, the numbers of people coming out, the vast majority of those are Afghans, by numbers. Go ahead.
The Secretary gave us some specificity in terms of what the President may consider completing the mission or achieving objectives as it pertains to Americans. Do you guys have a specific threshold or number when it comes to Afghans about what would define completing the mission or your objectives by August 31st in terms of evacuations?
We have never put a cap on the number of special immigrant visa applicants, the number of individuals who can apply for our variety of programs that are overseen by the State Department. And I'm not going to put a cap on that today. I'd also note that, as the Secretary of State said, we will continue, and we are continuing to look at a range of options to provide support and to provide a means for departing Afghanistan even after our U.S. military departs.
So there's nothing where you guys are looking at maybe the existing SIV backlog pre-August 14th and saying we want all 18,000?
We are not putting a cap on the number. We are continuing to work every day to get as many people evacuated as we can.
And just one more quick one. You guys have been very clear in stating these numbers are Americans that want to leave. There are clearly Americans, many of them dual citizens, who are also choosing not to leave.
Yeah.
What is the level of concern inside the administration about dual citizens or American citizens who choose to stay in the country at this point?
Well, I know this is very hard to understand for many people sitting here, and I think this is why you're asking this question. Or not sitting here even, I should say, people who watch your watch your shows or read your newspaper. But many of the people, we suspect, many of the people of these 1,000 contacts are dual citizens. Some, as Secretary Blinken noted, are people who may not be ready to leave for a variety of reasons. Maybe they have an extended family there. Maybe they've spent their entire lives in Afghanistan and they have not yet made the decision to depart. Maybe they're working on a range of projects, they're not ready to leave. I know that is hard for us to understand as we're looking at the images, but for many of these Afghans, this is their home. And yes, they are dual citizens. Yes, it is absolutely our responsibility to make sure we are reaching out to them multiple times. We are providing opportunity. We are finding ways to get them to the airport and evacuate them. But it is also their personal decision on whether they want to depart. Go ahead.
Could I just follow up a little bit on some of Nancy's questions about
Sure.
refugees?
Yeah.
So first, you talked about the vetting that's going on outside of the United States, after they leave Iraq. I'm sorry.
Oh, not out.
Afghanistan.
I didn't mean to imply outside of. Well, some of it is happening in Qatar, but some of it is happening here.
Okay, but I mean, it's before the people come to the
Yes.
United States, right? It's
Yeah.
happening before they arrive.
Yes.
So a lot of that vetting, some of the pace of that vetting is within your control. You can add more people, you can add more interviewers.
And we have done that.
But a lot of it is not in your control, right? Like somebody comes to you with no documents. It takes time to figure out where's the actual birth certificate. It takes time to find documents that prove 10 years of residency. It takes time to get the kind of proof that the FBI and some of these agencies
Sure.
like to use. So, does that all add up to refugee camps in these transit centers across the globe with tens of thousands of Afghans sitting for months, years, whatever? I mean, it doesn't sort of add up to those of us who sort of have seen that process. Back in 2015, when you were in a previous administration, one of the things that you guys argued was that the refugee community in particular was the most vetted community of people entering the United States, and you pointed to the fact that it takes a year or two for the typical refugee to sort of meet that burden. So I guess the question is, how can you possibly not have this, and where are you going to put these people?
So, okay, there was a lot of questions wrapped up in there. Let me do the best I can here. No, it's okay. I mean, all good questions. First, I would say, even prior to the last month or two, we took steps to expedite processing in the SIV pipeline. And I would remind you that for quite some time, it was a program that was frozen in March of 2020, and hardly anything was done for policy reasons, in part by the prior administration. It wasn't a program they necessarily supported, and also because of COVID. So we worked to expedite and actually had some success over the course of the few months in the spring, even before evacuation flights took place, to do exactly that. As Jake Sullivan said the other day, it was also not a program, to your point, that was planned for speed because of all of the requirements, because what Americans should also be assured of is that there is no one coming in through any of these programs who has not gone through a background check process and has been vetted. That is our responsibility to the American people, and one we will abide by. Hence, we are incredibly grateful to these third countries who are providing a place for a number of many tens of thousands of people to be for this period of time. And we have put a wide range of staff, personnel, and others on the vetting process from a range of agencies to ensure that we can take steps to expedite as quickly as possible. You're right that some of this is dependent on documents and is dependent on information being available. But I will just close with, and then I may have missed some of your questions, but this is incredibly difficult. We're very clear-eyed about that. And these Afghans, many of them who are departing, who are still in process, made the decision, and we made this decision too, that evacuating them because they are vulnerable, because their lives are at risk, and moving them to a third country, even if they are in transition for a period of time, is preferable to their lives being threatened.
And one more question here
Sure.
is that, okay, so assume that the people that are vetted once they're vetted,
Yep.
they come to the United States.
Yep.
Is it the commitment of this administration that all of those people, 100% of the people who have gotten through the vetting screens, obviously there might be some that fail and won't come to the United States, but that all the people that come are going to be granted legal permanent residency and a path to citizenship in the United States? Or is it possible that some of those people will have to apply through other programs and could be deported back to Afghanistan?
Well, once individuals arrive in the United States, they will be eligible to apply for asylum or other available immigration